I just cut and washed my hair. It's still a little wet. Hello, Happy New Year. Um, excuse that. Today we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in 2025. I had a really bad year, probably one of the worst years of my entire life. So I only read 12 books. 12 books is better than 0. Usually I do read more throughout the year, but I was fighting for my life. First book I read, and I have it all on paper. First book I read all year was Darker Eyes by C.S. Pacat, I think is how you say her name. This one was from 2021. This one is a YA. I think the term is high fantasy. I don't read fantasy. I exclusively read it because the main character, there's like an MM couple, and it's like an enemies to lovers kind of thing. I had never really read like a romantasy, but actually that's a lie. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses and I didn't like it. But then there was a part of me that I was like, well, maybe I would like it if it was MM. So I was kind of looking for like the highest rated like MM romantasies, and this was what came up. I didn't love it. It's roughly like 500 pages, so it wasn't like an overnight kind of thing for me. But it is YA, so it was really easy for me to read. I wrote down dark romantasy, but that makes it sound like it's like ACOTAR. It's not. It's a romantasy with like darker themes. There's a lot of themes about like murder and curses and sacrifice, and we need to sacrifice this person to do the blood curse. It's a lot of like that kind of stuff. I spent all last year bleaching my hair, and it's finally like it's getting to the point where it's trying to get curly again because it's been so long since I bleached it. So my hair texture is just really terrible. The protagonist is written like, it's about this guy, Will, and his mom dies, and he's like the only one that can save everybody. And then he has this friend who's a woman, because we need a girl. She's fighting for the other side. She's fighting for the lions, but the lions are bad. Yeah, okay. So he's destined to fight the Dark King. With the stewards, but the stewards don't like the lions, and the girl realizes the lions are bad, so she wants to be a steward, but she has lion blood. And then they find this twink, and he's like the reincarnation of a Dark Lord. So his dad is mean to him, and there's like he's in these weird relationships with older men. And then it like has a big twist at the end about how like the twink is the good guy and the main guy that you think is the good guy is the bad guy. I didn't like it. It was fine. But I just, it kept going on, and I have a really hard time getting into fantasy. Like, for me, there has been very few fantasy series that I genuinely enjoyed, and because fantasy is so like high stake, right? There's supposed to be like, we need to do this thing or we're all gonna die. But if I don't care about the world building, there's no suspense or high stakes for me. So like I finished it. I didn't DNF it. I finished it. But at the end of the day, I just kind of like, they'd be like, oh my god, plot twist. And I'd be like, okay. Like, the characters didn't really mean all that much to me, so I didn't really care. I gave this one a 2.5 out of 5. Not my favorite book I read. I read Nevada next, 2013 by Imogen Binnie. This one is super short. It's only like 250 pages. Very like stream of consciousness style writing. It's a very like fast-paced, reflective story. It follows, I think she starts the book 29 and then she like turns 30 during the book. And she She's trans. I think she's dating a cis woman, but I don't remember if she's dating a cis woman or a trans woman. But the main protagonist is a trans woman dating a woman. She is questioning her relationship with her girlfriend, and she's also working a job that she doesn't like. And halfway through the book, she basically, the girlfriend, the main character is like depressed and just kind of like aloof. And the girlfriend is trying to determine whether or not the main character really cares about her. So she says that she cheated on her. So the main character is like, okay, we're breaking up. But then the girlfriend of the main character is like, actually, I didn't cheat on you. I just wanted to see if you love me. So there's this they have a really weird dynamic where you're kind of just like happy when they break up. And it's not necessarily the fault of either of these women. It's just they clearly like don't really care about each other anymore. So they break up, and she steals her car, which is bad. But she takes her car and she goes on this road trip, and she ends up running into basically an egg in a Walmart. And the egg, which is a trans person who like hasn't admitted that they're trans, is I think like 22 roughly, because I remember them being the same age as me. And she's kind of like trying to like Yoda the younger trans person, but the younger trans person, you know, she just broke up with her girlfriend. She just quit her job. She's running around in a car doing coke. I think she's doing some kind of drug. I don't remember which one. Not weed though. She's doing stuff other than weed. It just kind of is like, so if I transition, is this what my life will look like? And they don't want their life to look like that. So I think by the end of the book, the person that she runs into on her trip doesn't end up transitioning and just kind of ends up living the rest of their life in the closet. Kind of like a life crisis-y story. I don't want to say like midlife crisis, more like quarter-life crisis. But it is a coming of age story in kind of two different ways, because you have the main character who's hitting her 30s and she's like quarter life crisising. But then you also have the 20-year-old who is probably trans but sees this mess of a trans woman and doesn't really want to go down that path, so decides not to transition, even though that the other woman is trying really hard to make her transition. So it's really weird. But it's kind of like a coming of age story in two different ways, and I thought that was really interesting. Next, I read Reprieve from 2021. This one was by and I gave Nevada 3 out of 5. Next, I read Reprieve 2021, James Hahn Madsen. This is straight a horror novel. It is set in the 90s in a southern state. I don't remember which one, but it is about she's black. She's a teenage girl. I think her dad dies and she's with her mom, and she's originally from the north, and then she moves to the south. This is set in the 90s, and she's goth, so she's like having a really hard time fitting in at school. And then she ends up working at a haunted house, kind of like a McCanny Manor style haunted house, like one of the extreme ones. She's not allowed to go in because she's underage, and the guy who owns it is kind of like a sleazy douchebag. And there's a couple of people who have money in it. She's working there. There's a couple different plots going on at the same time. Like there's a guy. When she moves in with her aunt and her cousin, who's like a guy who's like 2 years older than her. So she is basically like, enter the haunted house, you'll win a bunch of money, and I'll help you get through it. And he agrees to it because he needs money, because he's in college and she's in high school. As he's going through it and she's supposed to be helping him, the owner of the haunted house ends up, basically, they're in a lot of debt. And anyways, like a real murder happens inside the haunted house, but people think it's fake, and then other characters that you do care about end up getting killed, like in the crossfire. I thought it was kind of cool that it's about like an extreme haunt. Like there's no ghosts. It's literally just people fucking up. There's a lot of side stories that I just didn't really care about. Like, one of the side stories is about the owner, and his, like, wife leaves him, so he, like, goes to Taiwan and is, like, paying women to go on dates with him, and he's trying to take them back to America, but they clearly don't wanna go back to America. That stuff, I didn't care about. I pretty much exclusively cared about the girl and her cousin, so I ended up giving this book, like, 2 out of 5. So the next book that I read was Stag Dance. This one came out this year, 2025. It's by Tori Peters, who is the author of Detransition Baby. I tried to read a lot of books by trans people this year. I think Nevada by Imogen Binney is by a trans woman. And then Stag Dance is written by a trans woman. It's actually technically a novella, which is Stag Dance, and then there's also 3 short stories. They basically all, like, have characters with interesting experiences on gender. Like, the first one is kind of like, if you've read Manhunt, it kind of reminded me of that. But it's like a post-apocalyptic situation. It basically, like, so, you know, nobody can create hormones anymore. You have to pay a lot of money to get the hormones, so it becomes like a status symbol. All of the upper class people are able to present the way that they want to, but all the lower class people, specifically the men, basically are very androgynous because they don't have any more testosterone. And the main character is a trans woman who was trans before the epidemic. She's living, it cuts between the before, the lead up, and then also the after, where she's basically just, like, running around. And it's kind of interesting. It's only like 90 pages, so it's not like crazy or anything. It goes into a story about a boys' high school, like a boarding school in a dorm. Jesus Christ, their dorm roommates, and one of them is clearly questioning their gender, and they kind of get into a relationship, and there's a huge fallout because the rest of the school gets involved, and I thought that it was the saddest one. And then we go into Stag Dance. So Stag Dance, which is the novella, the namesake, is a very, like, convoluted story. The name Stag Dance comes from, I think, okay, in the late 1800s to the early 1900s, because I wasn't sure on the time period, so I wanted to Google it. In a lot of the trades, at bars and things like that, at parties, if you had, like, a whole colony of lumberjacks, some of them would dress up as women. So the book follows main character. Name is Babe, not real name, but that's what they do to kind of, like, make fun of them, because huge lumberjack, huge beard, whole 9 yards, stereotypical lumberjack. They're doing a stag dance, and there is, like, a younger, more feminine lumberjack who is, like, getting made fun of, basically, and told that they should be a woman. And Babe kind of, like, defends him. Anyways, as we're running through the story, Babe is kind of being treated like a woman and realizes that they like it. So it kind of is like an early 1800s trans story, but not in the stereotypical sense. And originally, Babe kind of has, like, I can't remember the name of the younger, more feminine one, but kind of has, like, an interesting relationship with them, where at first they're friends, and then there's, like, jealousy, and then they're friends again, and then they're not friends. I thought it was very interesting. I listened to it as an audiobook, so there was, because they're in, like, deep south, so there's a little bit of an accent going on in the audiobook, at least, so that was kind of challenging. And then the last one is called The Massacre, and it is about an egg again. There's a trans woman there. She's, like, 60, and she, like, used to be a cop, and she she is a trans woman, but like at times it almost feels like they really go out of their way to make her seem almost borderline obnoxious about it. So there's an egg, and then there's a very loud and outspoken 60-year-old trans woman. The egg is at this BDSM party and meets her, but then also meets this like weird fucking dude who's like a chaser. There's like this really weird interaction where the trans woman keeps like pushing boundaries, like, oh my god, you should transition, and then like, oh my god, I should talk to your mother, because the egg is like, yeah, my mom like hates trans people. And basically like Loki like stalks her, and she ends up going for the chaser guy, who ends up being like really fucking weird. And the book ends with the trans woman being arrested due to the chaser and the main character's actions. They like call the police on her to get her arrested, and it is really like devastating to read, because the main character like doesn't want to be that, so they are willing to put her in jail. I'm gonna move on to a different book now that I've talked about Stag Dance for 20 fucking minutes. I did a video on that one also. I read Model Home 2024 by Rivers. I can't read my own handwriting. It's Solomon. This book, very interesting. If you like Haunting of Hill House, you'll probably like this book. This one is kind of like a can of worms, if you know what I mean. Great book. Fantastic book. Loved it. One of my favorite books I read all year. Their parents, it's a group of 3 siblings, non-binary protagonist, and then 2 sisters. Their parents died, and they're going back to the house. Actually, their parents were super sick. They go back to the house. They find them dead. One of the parents was like had dementia, and then killed the other one, and then themselves. Something along those lines, like it was a murder-suicide situation. But they were going there because one of their parents had like rapid cognitive decline. So they get back into their house that they already don't want to be at due to like trauma and stuff, and then they find that. Also, the main character has a child who is like a 12-year-old girl. And then there's the other sisters also have children, but they're kind of irrelevant to the plot. They get there, and they're basically, so there's 2 different, not plot lines, but there's 2 different perspectives. You're seeing the current perspective, and then you're also cutting back to like them as a child. And as a child, a lot of bad shit happens to them. Trigger warning for this book for CSA, adult essay, suicide, basically every fucking thing you can think of. They are convinced that the house is haunted. Throughout the book, you realize that it was actually just almost like Mysterious Skin, but instead of aliens, ghosts. One of their neighbors was assaulting them, and that was kind of why they had all of these like weird memories surrounding the house, was because they were covering that up. Very sad book. It's only like 300 pages. Good book, but very depressing. I didn't really get a trigger warning for CSA. Like, it's not in the book. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. It makes sense, like, once they bring it up, and then you're kind of like, oh my god. But was not expecting it. Oh, and I gave that one a 4 out of 5. I read Don't Let the Forest In by C.J. Drews. I wanted to like this more than I did. It's a YA book. It's a horror book with the protagonists are an MM couple. They're basically, it's set in a boarding school. They're roommates. One of the boys is an artist, and he's learning that as he's drawing these weird, like, fucked up monsters, they're appearing behind the school. So they have to fight them. The imagery in it with the monsters was really cool. It kind of was like a gay Spiderwick Chronicles. That's kind of the vibe. I liked it. I just didn't like love it. I wasn't obsessed with it. It was interesting though, and I read it during fall, so it was like perfect. But I gave that one a 3.5 out of 5. But I also kind of think that it got screwed because it was right in between Monohone and Compound Fracture, which were two of my favorite books that I read this year. So it was, I feel like if I wouldn't have read it in between two books that I really, really liked, I think I would have been like, that was great. I read Compound Fracture 2024 by Andrew Joseph White. This one was a 5 out of 5. Like, this was probably my favorite book that I read this year. A lot of people do not like Andrew Joseph White. I've read 2 out of 4 of his books so far. I own the most recent one. I think it's called You Weren't Supposed to Be Human, something like that. And I'm planning on reading it this year. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But I read Compound Fracture. Trans guy living in fucking Midwest. Set in, he's fucking Appalachian. Trigger warning for a lot of different things. He's in high school, and I think he's like 16. He goes to a party in the woods, and he ends up being hate crimed. And he ends up killing one of them in self-defense, not on purpose, on accident. He kills one of the guys after the hate crime. Like, he confronts him about it, and then they kind of get into it, and he kills him. He hits his head when he falls and like cracks his head open. And then he's got this really like abusive, like, well, in the beginning he's not abusive. He's got this shitty fucking cisgender boyfriend who at first is very supportive and like, oh, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. And then it kind of turns into like almost like a Heather situation. He learns the full extent of what happened in the woods, and he's like, we should kill all of them. And the trans guy's like, no, we shouldn't. And then it just kind of like evolves into him convincing the trans guy that they need to kill everybody that was involved in that specific incident. There's also like another plot going on where it's set in Appalachia, and there was some kind of murder that happened that was covered up by the police like a couple years ago or something. And so the police already don't like their family. I think the cisgender boyfriend, his family was also involved in that. So the cops don't like him either. There's a really heartbreaking scene in this book where he's trying to convince him to kill somebody, and he clearly like doesn't want to like fucking do it. So he calls him his dead name to like piss him off, so he'll do it. And it's just very like, it's like, the only book I've ever read with a trans guy protagonist was Cemetery Boys, and that was like when I was 16. And I know this is technically YA, so I'm not gonna like fucking sing to the choir. But if this book, like if this book would have came out when I was like 14, it would have changed my fucking life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I read it now and I loved it. But I think if I was like 14, it would have been like it would have consumed me. So I really liked that one. And then I also read The Spirit Bears Its Teeth from 2023, which is also by Andrew Joseph White. I think it's very interesting that people get mad at him for only writing trans protagonists. I think that that is entirely fair. The majority of trans books involve trans women. So I think that if he wants to write 4 books that all have trans guy protagonists, he should fucking go for it, because nobody else is doing it. But The Spirit Bears Its Teeth is a like 1800s historical fiction set in Victorian England, and follows a trans guy in Victorian England who is sent to an insane asylum after developing veil sickness. This to me read like Hysteria. It's a little different, like their eyes are like purple and they can see ghosts, but to me it kind of felt like Hysteria. And then also he has this older brother who's a doctor, so he knows how to like do stitches and stuff, and he gets to the insane asylum and they find out that the men in charge are like abusing the women, and like one of the girls ends up giving herself an abortion, and the main character, his name is Silas, I think, walks in and helps her through that. because he's read like textbook. I don't know, whatever. But he wants to be a doctor, but he can't because he's biologically female. It's very depressing. The people in charge are, in fact, killing the people there. The patients are fighting over potential men because the only way that they're allowed out is if a man marries them. So there's a scene where, like, one girl shoves another girl down a stairwell so that she can't get married and leave so that the guy will marry somebody else. And it's really fucked up. And I actually really liked it. I thought it was good. I like stuff like that, though. One of my favorite books or one of my favorite games is Alice Madness Returns. I like the weird lobotomy stuff. So I thought it was really cool. I gave that one a 5 out of 5. The next book that I read was another trans book. I read Tell Me I'm Worthless from 2021 by Alison Rumfitt. This one is weird. It involves the two main characters are a trans woman and a cis woman who were originally best friends. And then they break into an abandoned building that ends up being like haunted. And there's another girl there too, but the other girl gets stuck there. The protagonists basically are both like tortured by the ghosts and made to believe that the other person hurt them. Trigger warning for SA. But they both believe that they were sexually assaulted by the other person, and due to hallucinations and stuff. And they walk out of there, and the cisgender woman becomes a very vocal online TERF. And they're constantly like smearing each other in the news and stuff like that. And the book is basically following their relationship after that and them meeting up again and being able to talk through things. And they end up going back to the house to like try to figure out exactly what happened. And I actually really liked it. It was another one that I listened to audiobook. I listened to it while building spirits. Lots of trigger warnings, obviously. I thought it was pretty enjoyable. It is a haunted house, and it's not like Model Home was a haunted house book, but it wasn't. This one actually is a haunted house book. And I give that one 4 out of 5. Okay, we're getting to slop. For December, I only read slop. I read Heated Rivalry, 2019, Rachel Reed. We know what this is. Hockey romance, gay. They're on 2 competing teams. They're captains. Shane. I loved Shane. I love that autistic man. And then Ilya is a fucking Russian princess. And I am actually planning on making a video just about this book and also kind of about the show. My main takeaways were the pacing in this is fucking insane. I have a lot of good things to say about it. I really liked, and I don't think that Shane was purposefully written to be autistic, but Rachel Reed has kind of been like, yeah, I completely understand why people think he is, so he can be. But I read him that way when I was reading the book, so that's kind of cool. I like their dynamic. I like their chemistry. You know, I like those 2 characters. But taking the characters out of the situation, the pacing in this book is fucking insane. This book did not need to take 10 years. I get that it's supposed to be like, because like they have sex like 20 pages in. It's just that they're sitting in a situationship for 10 years, which I get, like delayed gratification, I understand. But maybe it should have been longer, I guess, because every single chapter, it felt like we were skipping years, which is kind of hard to keep track of, low-key. I gave that one 3 out of 5. Next, I read Kiss the Villain by Rena Kent, 2025. I didn't like this book at all, and I'm planning on also making a video about it. This book, I finished Heated Rivalry, and I was like, let me look up like the top MM books. Let me just see. And this one was like one of the top ones. I got into it thinking it was just a dark romance. And I was like, sure, fine. I'll read it, whatever. They pull the fucking mafia I hate the mafia shit. I can't. The mafia shit pisses me off so bad. I think it's so lame. I think it's so annoying. But they pull the mafia shit out of the bag. But then they also bring up the fact that they're currently in the United Kingdom, which, like, and I googled it. I guess there is crime families in the United Kingdom, but like, there was no need for it to be set in the United Kingdom. If it would have been set in America, it would have had the exact same plot. It just would have made more sense. There was no, like, there was nothing Europe specific about this book. If it was set in America, nothing would have changed. I was fine with the age gap. I was fine with the professor-student thing. But, like, the mafia shit, no. I finished it because it pissed me off really bad and I wanted to know how it ended. Yeah, I wrote, didn't enjoy, read like bad fan fiction. British, question mark, question mark. Gareth is the worst name for a bottom I've ever heard. Why did you name that man Gareth? And I was like, okay, so Gareth, terrible name. Such a, like, Garrett is fine. Gareth, bro. And when they call him Gary, Caden is a fucking hypocrite. I could not stand that man. Multiple points in that book where just like nothing made sense. The characters were so fucking wishy-washy. Like, it wasn't like nobody had any morals. People would like, oh, I stand for this, and then they would go do it. Or do the opposite, and it was crazy. This is the only Rena Camp book I've ever read. I was gonna give her another chance. But I like Googled it, and apparently all of her books are like interconnected. I was originally gonna read, I think it's called like Gods of Fury or something, because I saw that that one was MM2. And dark romance, I've women. Whenever I read dark romance, like I've never read a dark romance book that isn't MM because I feel like if I read it as like FM, like it feels sexist. Like it feels wrong. Anyways, it feels wrong for me to read women being abused. Anyways, I thought about reading the other one, but apparently they're all like fucking connected. Like it's like a big crime family, a big mafia family, and that's like the whole plot. And I really don't want to sit through that. So I don't know if I'm gonna read the other one. I don't know if I'm gonna give her another chance. This one was rough, like it was bad. And then I read him, 2015, Elle Kennedy and Serena Bowen. I thought that this was fucking charming as hell. I wrote cute with 2 exclamation points. It's a hockey MM romance, friends to lovers. They meet when they're like fucking 8 or some shit, and they go to the same hockey camp, and they're roommates. And every summer they spend together. And then when they're like 18, they just stop talking because one of them figures out that he's gay. And he feels like he tricked the other one. So he doesn't want to like make him uncomfortable, so he just stops talking to him. And then they end up, because they play hockey in college, and they end up running into each other at a game. And they kind of like, they're chill once they apologize. And they kind of rebuild their relationship, and then they work at the summer camp. A big chunk of the book is set at the summer camp. And it's really fucking cute. Like, I thought that they had good chemistry. I thought it's pretty much straight fluff. Like there's a teeny tiny little bit of angst, but it's pretty much straight fluff. And I thought it was really cute. And I gave that one 3 out of 5. The only reason I read Kiss the Villain was because it was free on Kindle Unlimited. I don't know if my ranking starts. I get the lowest ranking possible. 0 or 1. However, I don't know if it has to be 1 out of 5 or it can be 0 out of 5. But you know what I mean. Him was also for Unkindle Unlimited, but I had a way better time with that one. But yeah, that was my 2025 reading wrapped. I've been filming for like an hour. So I'm gonna head out. But if you have any weird books you want to recommend, let me know. I'm trying to read more this year. 12 feels pathetic, but I had a really bad year, so I'm lucky I picked up a book at all, honest to God. But yeah, I hope you have a nice day, and goodbye.